So this is just a quick overview of Photoshop's interface, Adobe Photoshop. So I'm just going to kind of quickly show you it. All right, so it might look a little bit different. I'm using a PC here, but it's generally the same regardless. Just some things might be slightly different. All right, so on the very top here, you have the main menu, if you will. So if you hit File, this will give you like your typical things you see in every program. You can open, you can save, you can export, things that deal with just dealing with files in general. I'm just going to go ahead and open up an image just so there's something. Okay, so open image. Okay. So there's an image. All right. So you have File, you have that. Edit is your typical things that you would normally see with editing. So copying and pasting, undoing, redoing, all of those sort of things are in here. There's also some things that let you edit either the pieces of an image, so you can rotate. I could grab a chunk of his arm and then rotate it or transform it in some way. I could scale it. Warp it, that sort of thing. Okay. Image, this is generally for like whole image adjustments. So I could change generally the brightness contrast. I can make the image really bright or really dark. It has gross adjustments are found in here. Okay. Layer is like what the word says. It's just layer. It will go through and you can make a new layer, you can make a new adjustment layer, you'll see that later on. Basically, it's a layer that will adjust everything that's underneath it, kind of like image adjustments, but it's a layer instead. And other things dealing with layers in general. Type is basically dealing with text. Anything you can think of in there deals with type. Select deals with selection. So if I were to make a selection, like just do a general rectangular marquee here, if I go to select, you'll see that now I have a little bit more of options. I can do little things like I can feather that. So right now, if I were to Control X cut it, you'll see that it's a straight cut, right? But if I were to modify it and let's say feather it, I could feather it like that. And now watch what I'm saying, cut it. You can see it's feathered, right? See how it's fuzzy now? Basically, it just gives you the options of with your selection. Okay. Filter is basically, I would say it's like effects. It gives you a bunch of options for blurring, like if I want to add a blur, if I want to distort the image in some way. Again, these are gross adjustments generally, unless you make a selection, then it will only affect the selection. Like noise, if I need to add noise, which is like speckledness, you can pixelate. Some of them are very arty, farty, but that's generally what that works with. 3D, you really won't have to worry about for right now, but you can literally bring in 3D models and paint on them and do things with 3D. We're not going to worry too much about that. View deals with most of the things that deal with viewing, so zooming in, zooming out, that sort of stuff. Guides, if you want snapping enabled, like you want objects to be able to snap to other objects, that sort of stuff. Window deals with what's currently visible. So for instance, see how like it says adjustments. If I turn this off, you'll see my, oh, it's still over there. There it is. It'll turn that off. Okay. So basically it shows it's what's being visible. So there's a bunch of that. Another thing that's really useful is that, for instance, let's say for some reason you accidentally did something where you took some of these things off, right? And you're stuck like this and you want it to look like it used to. If you go to Window, you can go to Workspace and then you can just do Reset Essentials, which is the current workspace we're working in. And then, hang on a second, it's kind of slow. There it goes. It'll reset it to what it originally was. And so now it'll be back to that Essentials workspace. And then Help is Help. There's really, like you would typically see. So there's different workspaces. So you see here I have Essentials, which is normally what you're going to work with. But there's other ones like if I was working in 3D, this will give me the panels that are most common for 3D work. If I'm doing something with typography, type, it'll give me more stuff to deal with character and paragraph. And so on and so forth, right? Photography will give me things that would be more common that I would need with photography. But generally speaking, just stick with Essentials and that will give you most of what you want. Okay. Underneath that is the toolbar. And basically what this is specific, and that's this chunk right here, is specific to whatever tool you currently have selected. Now, currently I don't have any tool or I guess I have the zoom tool selected. So it gives me the options for that. If I have just the select tool, it'll give me options for that. If I have this marquee, you can see it changes depending on what is selected. Okay. So it's kind of just like the options for the toolbox. Okay. So that being said, this is the toolbox. I'm just going to go real quickly. This is generally just the select tool, so it allows you to move. Oh, this is locked. Hang on a second. Let me just unlock it. There we go. Okay. It'll allow me to like move objects. Okay. Control Z. Okay. Apparently that's Control D, Control Z. There we go. Let me move them. If you have this show transform controls, it'll allow you to scale it and also to rotate it. Okay. But that's what that is. This is marquee select. So basically what that does is it lets you select chunks like that. Okay. And then you can cut them with like Control X or Command X. Also, like again, where you're doing these adjustments and things, if I go to image adjustments, it will only affect the section I have selected, as you can see. Okay. Now, if you hold it down, you'll see that there's other options here. So there's also elliptical, so that will draw. I can draw a circle. Okay. And other ones as well. Okay. And if you hover over it, actually will tell you what you're looking at. Hopefully, I used to. Okay, so this one is, again, it's another selection, but this is the lasso tool, and this just lets you draw what you want to select. Okay, we'll go more into that later. Again, if you hold it down, you'll see a bunch of them. The other thing you'll see is that you'll notice that, so I can do like the polygonal one, and okay. Oops, I thought I selected it. Polygonal lasso tool. Okay, and you can see it will make a polygonal one. All right. But you'll also see that there's the hotkey here. So L is the hotkey for lasso. So if I'm on the select tool, if I hit L, it's going to bring back up the lasso. Okay. Also, if I hit Shift L, it'll toggle through. You can see over here, it'll toggle through them. Okay. So I'm just going to hit Control D or Command D to clear my selection. This is the magic wand. Basically, what that does is it selects alike pieces. You can see it tries to select whole areas. There's also this quick selection tool. Again, we'll go more into this later, but it does kind of a similar thing. Okay. Then we have the crop tool, which basically allows, oops, I was still on that. Thought I was clicked on it. The crop tool, which basically allows you to, not working very well, allows you to crop a specific area, and then that becomes what the image is. And you can see everything else is gone. Like if I want to do just a picture of his face, it'll be just his face now. Okay. And there's settings and things for that as well. So I'm just going to back this up a little. All right. And we won't worry about those yet. This is just the eyedropper tool, which allows me to select colors. So I can, if I want like this blue up here, I can just click on it and it'll give me that color. And then when I go to paintbrush, it will, let me see. Oh, it's on hue. Oh, I'm not on paintbrush, that's why. But if I'm on paintbrush, it will now paint that color. Okay. So that's the eyedropper tool. And don't worry about the other ones. Okay. This is the heel brush, which basically, it tries to, copy other areas around it generally and replace what you're clicking on. So it probably would be easiest just to show you. So you can see like he has got this imperfection here, right? But if I click on it, see how it's gone? What it did is it samples the area around it and replaces what's inside of it with that. So let's see what happens. This might be freaky. Gets rid of his eye, right? So it's kind of weird. I'm going to leave it because it's weird. Okay, so that's what that does. And there's other options here too. There's also like the patch tool, but they all deal with kind of the same basic idea of sampling other areas and replacing other areas with what you're currently clicking on. The brush tool is like what it sounds like. There's a brush, there's paint. Basically, it's just a paintbrush Okay, it's much fancier than that. We'll actually have an assignment where we use that. This is a stamp tool. It will stamp. It's the clone stamp tool. It's kind of like the heel brush where, like, let's say I want to have an eye over here. I can sample. I'll hit Alt, click on that, and then I'll go over here, and now he's got another eye. This is looking great. Okay, so this is the history brush tool. Honestly, I don't really use it. The eraser is an eraser. There's really not too much to know about that. Erases an area. The paint bucket is basically it'll try to drop paint into a whole shape as much as possible within a tolerance. So the tolerance here you can see is 32. If I did 1, you're going to see that it doesn't do very much. But if I made the tolerance much higher, let's say 66, you'll see it actually did more this time. Okay, so that's what that does. There's also a gradient tool, which is kind of like the paint tool. It's just it'll paint a gradient. So that's that. This is the smudge tool. So when it's really large, it doesn't work real well. But basically, you'll see it smears, sort of. Okay. And there's also the blur and sharpen underneath it. So sharpen will try to sharpen an area. So you can kind of see, which will add noise generally. But I don't know if you can see it in the video. But see how it's getting like more and more textured. Blur will obviously blur it. It'll do the opposite, where it will start to become more and more blurred and fuzzy. Okay. Underneath that, you have the dodge, the burn, the sponge. Dodge lightens an image, okay, where you brush. So you see how it's getting lighter, okay? And burn darkens, okay? And sponge is kind of a weird one where it'll either saturate. So you can see this is getting more and more saturated, more and more full of color, or it will desaturate and it'll become less and less color, okay? Then we have the pen tool, which is for basically drawing Bezier curves. And we'll get into that later. The type tool, which is for typing text, which I'm not doing too much right now. This deals with if you have shapes and stuff, it allows you, this is like direct select. And you can see now I can actually adjust that curve. So this is actually specifically for like vectors and stuff. Which is what this pen tool drew. We'll get into that too. This draws shapes. So right now it's drawing this shape, and which is really great. Okay. So, and the hand tool, which is just for panning, so you can pan. You can also just hold spacebar. You don't need to actually click on it. The next tool is zoom, so you can click in. If you hold Alt and click, it'll zoom out. Again, you also don't need that. So you could, if you do Control plus and Control minus, or Command plus, Command minus, that'll zoom in and out. Also, if you hold Alt and with your middle mouse button, click and drag in, or you can just hit Z to quickly get the zoom tool. Okay. This is background color, or foreground color and background color. Basically, the foreground color is what you're currently painting. We'll get into these later. Okay, so that's that. And we'll get more specific about what these things are. But basically what they allow you to do is work with specific areas. Over here, these top panels can kind of change. You could put all sorts of different ones that you want in there. So if I wanted character, I could put character in here. Okay, you just kind of click and drag them in there. Generally, usually you have this on adjustments, and we'll talk more about these later. This one's for color, which is just, you can choose your color over here. You can see it changes on the foreground color. Try and keep this under 15 minutes. But these can be different, but usually this is what you'll normally start with. And we'll get into what these are. But basically, they're like different tools and functions and things that you can use that will have icons and things. And there's all sorts of different stuff in here. Okay. Now, lastly is the layers. And basically, the way the layers work is that one layer is one on top of another, and if I have one layer, so I can add a layer, and then I can use my paintbrush, and you can see I can have that layer, but I can also put it underneath. If it's underneath the picture, it's still underneath it, but it is still there. Okay, they're just like pieces of paper on top of each other. All right, so that is 15 minutes exactly. So that's the quickest intro I could do. So good luck.